I don't know. Right, hello everyone.
Can I stand here?
You can stand there, and I'm just going to do my thing.
Right, okay.
Depression New Deal, which is section B on paper 2. So in your trial exam, it will be section B. The last 2 weeks you've done Roaring Twenties. This week we're going to do the Depression New Deal with me, Miss Welsh. Miss Welsh obviously is the guru of the 1920s, 30s of Vietnam because she works for the exam board and marks not your papers, but people just like you around the world. So lots of things.
Around the world?
Well, if there's an international school, they can send it to you.
That's very good. Haven't had that yet.
Like an international star. Effects of the Wall Street crash?
Yeah.
Okay, who's going to kick us off? Effects of the Wall Street crash. Who's going to tell us something that happened that was bad because of the Wall Street crash?
Don't ask to shout with one.
Now, that's okay, people. You know, it becomes quite tenuous if we just sit here in silence. Right, Joe Devine. Tell me a result of the Wall Street crash, something bad that happened to people or poverty. Okay, excellent. Mass poverty. Give me an example of what mass poverty is. What happens to individuals? What do they lose?
Their houses.
Excellent. So people lose their houses. I'm going to start writing.
What do people have to do then when they lose their homes? Where do they have to live instead? In what? On the street, but what do they sometimes build for themselves? Oh, I heard a whisper. Excellent, Hoovervilles, good. So they build Hoovervilles, don't they, for them to live in. Where are the Hoovervilles often? Where are they? Any ideas? On the outskirts of the cities. So they built Hoovervilles on the outskirts of the cities. There was a family in New York who lived in a cave in Central Park because they had nowhere else to live. So they lived in Hoovervilles. Anything else then that happens to people during the Wall Street crash? Another effect, so mass poverty, so people are homeless. Anything else that happens to them? Any other ideas?
Businesses, come on, what happens to businesses?
Stock market crashes.
Right, stock market crashes, what's the knock-on effect on businesses? Close,
Right.
how many? X.
Yeah. So if 100,000 businesses close, what do lots of people become then as a result of this? The businesses are closed.
Unemployed.
Excellent. Unemployed, yeah. At its peak, what is unemployment? Anyone remember? Because it's the facts and stats that get you the extra little marks. Anyone any ideas? I think I heard some rumbling girls in the back table. Yeah, 14 million, which is what percentage of the population? Have a guess.
25.
It is 25. Yeah, good. It's 25%. So by 1933, it's at 14.7 million. Mr. Lee's going in. The reason I say 1933 is that it's not quite as high in 1932, and sometimes the exam board puts a date in, so you do need to know the difference between the two, because if not, you might not get the marks available. But sometimes the examiner is a little bit sneaky. So none of it. So unemployment, businesses are failing, mass poverty. Anything else? What do loads of bankers do after the Wall Street crash, or what do some people do as a consequence, which is sad?
Commit suicide.
Yeah, suicide rates are really quite high. Sad, isn't it? So suicide rates are quite high. Also, all of these arrived. Are we?
Not got them.
Yeah, we've shared.
And then all the neighbours were either sleeping away.
You got locked out.
So you had to wake your neighbours
I
up.
had to go to a different neighbour to get a key to get into the neighbours who's got Mikey's house.
I need to get brioche.
Well done.
Right, so suicide rates were up. What did some people, not really high figures, but what did some people actually die of as well due to their mass poverty?
Starving.
Yeah, starvation. So starvation was also an issue as well. I don't know if Mr. Lee's even got space. You've got
Yes.
too much stuff there. Oh, you can put
I
it in
can
there.
write that in there.
Yeah, so lots of people were admitted to hospital with real malnutrition, things like that, and starvation rates was also high.
Those people that were starving, little things sprung up in cities to help
Soup
those
kitchens.
people. Correct, soup kitchens, okay? And they spring up for the homeless.
Who runs the soup kitchens though? Who would you think would run the soup kitchens if your country's in kind of this situation? Who would you assume would do it? The government. Who does do it though in America? Yeah, people like Al Capone, or it's charities, things like the Salvation Army. Is that what you said?
Yeah, Izzy has a thing for the gangsters.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So, it's actually not the government, is it? It's actually sort of local charities or maybe wealthy business owners and things like that. So, the Wall Street crash then, pretty bad, isn't it?
Yeah, I feel
Your
you
bets.
should draw a sad face.
Yeah.
Don't just draw a sad face in your exam.
So, you can see that's the start of the Depression. One final thing maybe, what happens to a lot of banks?
Oh yes.
They go back.
Yeah, lots of banks go bust, don't they? If a bank goes bust, what happens to the ordinary Americans that weren't gambling on the stock market, that had just put Granny Clegg's money in the
They would lose it.
Yeah, they'd lose it.
Who's
wouldn't they?
Granny
I
Clegg?
think actually, do you know who Granny Clegg is? In Emmerdale, because obviously I do love a soul. That's stuff that Kieran has made. That's like a sort of nice fruit juice to sell, to people. I think that's called Granny Clegg.
You don't get this anywhere else, people.
I'm okay with liking Emmerdale. Anyone else like Emmerdale?
Wow!
Oh, no.
Wow! What does that tell you?
I'm okay with
Even
that.
I've never watched it.
Yeah, whatever. You texted me last night about it.
Yeah.
So, banks also go bust, which means that ordinary people that hadn't been spending their money on the stock market, that had just generally been putting their savings or maybe their wages in there, they also lose their money as well. So it affects the ordinary people that hadn't been silly during the 1920s.
That's why loads of older people then started hiding their money in the house,
Yeah.
under the floorboards.
Well, people didn't really trust banks that much, I guess, even at that time period anyway, and that just confirms it. Right, so let's have a look at Hoover then. So we know Hoover, bless him, I get this a little bit, becomes president in 1929 when things are great. What does Hoover think he's going to have to do when he's president? If he gets in when everything's brilliant? Nothing, yeah. He doesn't want to do anything because the other presidents of the 1920s have taken naps, had some parties. They've had a great time in the White House, haven't they? So he becomes president when things are going good. However, quickly things turn quite bad, don't they? Because of the fact of the Wall Street crash happening. So quickly he needs to do something. What do some people accuse Hoover of being, and what kind of president? A do-nothing good. Some people say he's a do-nothing president. Is that fair? Does he do nothing at all?
No.
No. What do some people say that it is instead, which is maybe a little bit more of an accurate description of him? Because when does he do the stuff that he does?
Too late.
Yeah, too late. So it's like this idea of too little, too late. Great. So I think it's very unfair to say he does nothing, but he does do things maybe a little bit later than he should. Because if we think about Hoover, what are his two key policies, which means it's going to be hard for him to do lots of stuff. What does he believe in?
Laissez-faire, rugged
Excellent.
individuals.
Excellent, brilliant. Laissez-faire, rugged individualism. So really, if he does a lot of stuff, it's going against his policies, isn't it? Which is going to be quite difficult. Also, some skeptics, what do they think about when Hoover does stuff? When do he seem to do a lot of things, which maybe makes people feel a little bit sceptical about how much he really wants to help? What comes up? And then all of a sudden Hoover does things. Excellent, an election. So it feels like he's done it in order to gain some popularity. Right, so what does he do though? Even if it doesn't help, but what does Hoover actually do to try and get America out of this depression? What kind of things does he do?
Doesn't he lower taxes?
He does. He lowers taxes, doesn't he, in America to try and get businesses to kickstart again. Excellent one. What else does he do?
The Hoover Dam.
Excellent. He builds the Hoover Dam. So again, it's something that people can start and work on. He builds the Hoover Dam, and there's other schemes like the Hoover Dam. That's the biggest one. Good. How many people work at the Hoover Dam at its peak? Anyone know? Any ideas?
I've written it, but I think we'll still check another one.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So it's 10,000 workers. So he builds the Hoover Dam and he does put money into that scheme, but how much is that pot of money to build things like the Hoover Dam? I don't know how much money you put aside for these sort of government projects. Anyone like ideas? It's about $261 million, sorry, not pounds, not in Britain. So in total, around 17,000 people got work from him spending $261 million. Do Do you think that's quite good that 17,000 people got a job if he spent 261 million? Maybe not, it's quite expensive, isn't it, for
not great.
what's come out. I know the Hoover Dam is still there now, you can go and visit it. People like to point at it.
Mr. Rule loves
Mr.
to point
Rule
it when
loves
he's
pointing at it, yeah.
slightly sunburned.
Yeah, he does.
Very sunburned.
Yeah.
Very red.
Mr. Will got burned at a cricket match in the UK when there was no sun.
You know, we went to a cricket match which got rained off
And he was
because the
burned.
weather was so bad, and he got sunburned. There was no sun. The man is a medical marvel.
I don't know what to call it, a medical marvel.
Well, he is.
Right, what else does he do? So we've got lower taxes, Hoover Dam. What else does he do? Yes.
Farm board.
Farm board, excellent. Farm board, brilliant. So what's the farm board? What's his aim with that? What does he do with it? He does set up the farm board, but what is it? Any ideas? Have we all heard of the self-farm board? Yeah, because we may need to know about this.
Yes, come on, think. What's wrong with farmers even before? Because this actually set up before the Wall Street crash happens.
What are they doing with
Is
their
it Tom?
crops?
Overproducing, not getting enough money.
So there's overproduction, so what does the farm board do? If the farmers are producing too much...
For the,
Okay, go on.
give them money for the products.
Yeah, okay, so they start buying surplus goods. Surplus things that the farmers are overproducing, they start buying it up. Which is great, but what's the problem?
What do the farmers keep doing?
Overproducing.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
keep overproducing.
So they overproduce, so then what happens? So the government's been buying all this stuff. We've been buying from Izzy's farm here with all our little workers and cattle. Not that I'm saying any of you are cattle. So we've got that going on there. But then Joe's farm, he's overproducing, so we're now buying stuff off Joe. Okay, Erin's farm's now overproducing, we're buying stuff off Erin. What's the problem for the government? To their big stockpile. We've now got too much. So me and Miss Welsh have now got too much.
We've got a lot of brioche here.
We have, which you're going to eat. All right, and then you start producing, you start producing, you start producing, you start producing. So what happens to the farm board? What can't it do? Yeah, it can't continue because it can't handle all the overproduction.
Do they kill the pigs?
That's Roosevelt.
Right.
But that's the same idea that he does the AAA, which we'll go on to next, and he does the same thing that, because again they've got too much stock, and actually it's probably cheaper and quicker to kill them than it is to farm it out. But that's really unpopular, isn't it? Because obviously people would say people are starving and you've killed 6 million, 6 million piglets.
That's just your
slaughtered
thing.
them. Yeah, good. Right, so we've got the farm board. What else does he do? Anything else does he do? It's a big one to do with taxation. Doesn't really work, but again, he's trying to do something. It's a double-barreled name.
Something to do with goods going in and out of the country.
Excellent, yeah, Hawley Smooth Tariff, yeah. So what again is he trying to do with this? What again is he trying to do? Who's he trying to protect? Americans. He's trying to protect American goods because again, they put tax on foreign goods. The issue with that is, what can people in America not do even if they tax the foreign goods? Buy the American goods anyway, so it's pointless. As a retaliation, what does the rest of the world do because of the small...
They put taxes on Americans.
Yeah, they put it on the same. So before, when they could maybe sell some of their goods abroad, they can't do that. So it just makes the situation worse.
Why did he do that? What was he copying from? I think 1920s.
That's also double-barreled.
Yeah.
Excellent, 14
So
will come back.
he sees that works, or he perceives that that works, so he thinks, well, I'll just do it again. I'll do another tariff act because that worked in the 1920s, so that'll get things going again. Obviously.
I think that's great. 4 points, I think that would be good because if you maybe got asked an 8-mark question, 3 paragraphs would be more than enough there. So you might potentially maybe want to put 2 of them together, maybe lowering taxes and Hawley Smooth Tariff together. 3 developed paragraphs would be enough. Mr. Lees is going to put a couple of other ones on, the RFC, Reconstruction Finance.
The Mr. Carraday's.
Oh. Again, a way of trying to help businesses and banks as well. So you've got 5 to choose from there. What about the unpopularity of Hoover? Why was Hoover so unpopular? Because we said they named things after him, so you've got Hoovervilles. What else do they name after him as well? What else can you have other than
Hoover Flag.
Hooverville?
Hoover flag.
Hoover blanket,
Hoover flag.
Hoover flag,
Hoover shoes.
Hoover shoes, yeah, Hoover soup. So they name loads of things after him, which isn't really very popular. So there's Mr. Lee's going to write them on there. So we've got Hoover blanket, Hoover soup, Hoover flag. What is a Hoover flag?
Where your pockets are empty.
Do it.
Yeah,
doing
wait.
it. Doing it.
My pockets don't come out there, just simply there. So I can't pull mine out. But yeah, pull their pockets out, say they've got no cash. So people are really negative about him. But you've just told me 5 things that he does. So why is he so unpopular? Because he hasn't done nothing at all, but why is he so unpopular? What happened during his time in office that makes him so unpopular? Because there's a couple of key events.
Just speeches, isn't it?
Right, his speeches. People don't like his speeches. Why though? What's the problem with his speeches? What does he keep saying which really annoys people? It's not that bad. So he says it's not that bad for a start. That's fine if you're living in the White House and you've still got all of your luxuries. It's different if you're living in a shanty town just outside of New York, where in the winter, how cold does New York get in the winter?
Minus.
Yeah, it gets down, you know, we're talking in the minuses, aren't we? You can get down to as low as sort of minus 15, minus 20. So that's fine for you. If you're living in the White House, but not for other people. So his speeches aren't very good. Saying things like prosperity's around the corner, no one is actually starving. You know, he says all these things that don't really help people at all. What else happens? There's a big event that happens in Washington.
Oh, that moth. Is it that moth
Excellent,
thing?
yeah.
And then a baby and 2 people die.
Yes, excellent. So something called the bonus marches. So as Erin rightly said there, we've got this idea of the bonus marches. Who was meant to be getting bonuses in 1945?
Veterans.
The veterans, yeah. What are people's views about veterans, particularly American veterans? They're respected, aren't they? Yeah, because these are people that fought for their country. So what do the veterans want? Yeah, good. Their bonuses early. I heard it even with your little voice. So their bonuses early. So they want their bonuses early. To be fair to Hoover, could he give them their bonuses early at that time? No. However, what does he do instead of maybe going out and speaking to them, or maybe getting someone else to speak to them? What does he use instead, which is potentially a little bit heavy-handed? What does he use instead? The army. He gets the army to disperse the people. What do they use? Tear gas, yeah. So I think 2 babies die and there's a number of people are injured. I'm not sure if I know how many people are injured, do you?
No, but...
Two children do die. Yeah. And there was 20,000 people on this march. Will this have been in all of the newspapers and on the radio and things like that? Yeah, so if you weren't sure about Hoover and you hear about this, what is your opinion going to be about him? Is it going to change potentially? Yes, because you're not going to like what he's done.
So he kills 2 children, well 2 babies,
Yeah.
and he sets fire to their
Camp.
I suppose their little camp
Yeah.
that they've set up, which does put a lot of people in hospital.
So, would we say that was an appropriate response for what those people were doing, do we think? Not really, no. It seems very, very harsh in comparison to what they were doing, which is fundamentally just sort of having a protest about wanting their money early. There's one final thing he doesn't do, which people are really unhappy about. Think about what they introduced in the 1920s, and he won't get rid of it. Excellent, prohibition. So lots of people are campaigning for prohibition to end. So let's think back to the 1920s. What happens in the 1920s that really changes people's opinions about prohibition? Do a little 1920s, 1930s Lincoln. What event happens towards the end? The date is coming up soon. You may have already bought a card for that person you love. Excellent. Valentine's Day massacre. Have you got my card?
Yep.
Excellent. So,
Haven't got your gift yet though.
flowers are always okay.
Yeah, we'll see.
No, you will. Right, so...
That's really wrong as I'm on the ground as well. This is
That looks really bad.
Beat
You haven't got a wedding ring on.
Yeah.
It's not to me. So...
One day we'll see one day.
Valentine's Day massacre happens. That changes people's opinions, doesn't it, about prohibition. So people want a revoke of prohibition, don't they? Why else will that be positive? Why else do people want prohibition to be revoked? Not just because of the gangsters and Al Capone and things like that, but why else will it be good at this time to get rid of prohibition? More money in the economy, rather than it going into the underground economy. Your boyfriend, Al, getting all of the cash.
I don't know
Yeah?
if she wants to be with Al. I feel as if... Yeah.
All right, just one of his sidekicks. Maybe one of the younger ones.
She likes the idea of the thrill, I think. The thrill of being on the
Yeah.
run all the time.
So, it would help put money back into the economy. It would provide jobs and things like that. It would also, how do people feel if they were able to get, if they were able to have drinking back? How would that make people feel as well? Happier, yeah. This idea of maybe going at the end of a tough week to the pub to have a drink, you know, the idea of it's quite a social interaction. And remember, it goes against their idea of liberty and freedom, doesn't it, not being able to drink. So they want it revoked. Why won't he? Why won't he revoke it? What do we know about Hoover's character, which is why he doesn't do it? Think about America as a whole and their kind of opinions about things.
What's his personality like? Is he an open guy who's happy to make changes and listen to the people?
No.
What is he like? Yeah, he's quite stubborn, and he believes in rugged individualism, he believes in laissez-faire, leaving everything alone and things like that. So he doesn't want to help. Or he does, but I feel sorry for him. I just, because nothing like this has ever happened before.
Yeah, that's true.
He doesn't know how to deal with it. I feel a bit sorry for him.
Yeah, that is true.
Her.
The final reason though why he doesn't want to end it is a Quaker. Do you know what a Quaker is?
What?
A Quaker. So it's a type of like religion. So it's sort of an extreme version of Christianity. And what do a lot of Christians not believe in? What do a lot of religious people not believe in? Drinking. So he's never drunk himself probably, or he's probably likely to drink very, very little because he's a Quaker, that's his religion. So for him, he's not going to necessarily go against his religion because he actually thinks that drinking isn't okay. So again, he's maybe putting his own personal views about things into it. Right, so we've seen about Hoover, and we're going to now have a look at our good old pal Roosevelt. So 1932 comes along, and there is an election. Oh, he does believe in religion.
No, doesn't believe in drinking.
All right, yeah.
I was just getting excited.
It's okay. So, 1932 election for Roosevelt. What does he do that's really good, that's really popular? What does he do on his election trail? Why is he so popular? Good old Roosevelt.
I'll act it out. Hello.
He goes wrong.
Hello.
Like different places.
Excellent, good, yeah. So he goes round, I know, on a campaign trail, doesn't he? And you might have seen, which is really good, that is what they're doing now, aren't they? Because I'm sure you might be aware that they've started the race to become president, haven't they? And that's what they're doing now. So Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton are on their way around campaigning. If you lived in America, you could maybe see the good old Donald Trump. It would be fun for people, wouldn't it? Or Hillary. So he travels around the country to visit people. What does he also do that makes people feel included when he goes around as well, which is maybe a little different to some of the other presidents?
Because he has polio.
Right, so people can relate to him because he's had polio, don't he? So he's been through a difficult time. So you know that he's in a wheelchair, so he's overcome adversity, which people do really respond to. And obviously he is maybe a little bit weaker than other people, but he doesn't let that be a barrier to him going on and doing what he wants. Who will he also talk to as well? What kind of people?
The homeless and like the poor.
Excellent, it's like the ordinary people, yeah. It's meant to be sort of linked to the forgotten man, this idea of the ordinary people. So we won't just talk to kind of rich people, wealthy people, he'll talk to the ordinary man, he'll shake their hand, he'll discuss things with them, so people feel that he's just that little bit warmer. Where has he been working previously, which is why people quite like him? Where has he already been working previously?
In the government in New York.
Excellent, yeah, he's the governor of New York. And has he done a good job there in New York?
Yes, he has.
Yes, he has. He's done a really good job in New York, so he's got a little bit of proven track record.
What else does he do?
He helps out in soup kitchens.
He does, yeah. As part of his campaign trail, he goes in, he helps out in soup kitchens. What else does he do? Think about it, if you are running for president and you're up against someone that has a bad reputation, what do you do?
Put them down.
Say again?
Put them down.
How? What do you use?
Propaganda.
Propaganda. So you had a massive propaganda campaign.
So what if there's that to overcome?
Pardon?
What does that say?
Personal struggle, polio, overcome personal struggle, which people respond well.
Is that the smilette saying?
Yeah, Smiley. So, he has a propaganda campaign, so I'll just write there. And his famous propaganda poster is called the Smilette. Alright, and it's essentially a poster, and it's got a person's face on it, and the Smilette is a device that makes you smile. So it's essentially like a bit of metal that makes you smile all the time, because he's poking fun at the Republicans, he's poking fun at Hoover, because Hoover's suggesting that everything's okay, we're just going to smile through all these big problems. So he has a massive propaganda campaign. If you can get in, use the Smilette poster, that would be really good. Alright, but his propaganda campaign is very famous.
What does he say he's going to do as well during his propaganda campaign that's really popular? What does he say he's going to do?
He said he's gonna like end prohibition. He says that he's gonna like make things better, but it doesn't tell us how.
Excellent, right. So he says he's going to end prohibition. Is that going to be popular from what we've just said? Yes, because we know that that's something that a lot of people want. And then he also, as Erin rightly said, says he's going to improve things. He says he's going to give people jobs, he says he's going to help the farmer. But the final thing with what you said was really important is he doesn't quite say how. He keeps it a little bit vague. So he's not actually promising anything yet. He's just saying, I will improve things. So then when he gets into office, hopefully, he can then think about how he's going to do it. So he is a little bit vague about what he's going to do.
Yeah.
Right, so 1932 election then. So obviously, just to say, as much as Roosevelt's campaigning, will Hoover be campaigning as well? Will Hoover campaign also? Yes, what's the only problem that Hoover's got, to be fair to him as well, which is why probably it is maybe a little bit for Roosevelt than it is for Hoover. As well as campaigning, what's Roosevelt still got to do?
Win.
He has got to win, but he's still got to run the country, hasn't he, as well? So he can't necessarily go on this huge campaign trail in the same way, because obviously he's still got to be running the country. Right, so the 1932 election rolls around after all the campaigning that both candidates have done. Who wins?
Roosevelt.
Roosevelt, yeah. By how much? Anyone remember how many states he wins? Is it a lot or a little?
A lot.
A lot, yeah. It's 42, if I remember correctly,
You are
out of the
correct.
48 states. So remember by then, which two states aren't part of the USA then? Twice only 48. 2 states not part of it at that point. Hawaii, yeah. A lovely holiday destination, I imagine. And another one that's not attached, cold.
Cuba.
Alaska, yeah, so that's why it's only 48. So he wins by a landslide, 42 out of the 48 states. So he wins by a really, really big landslide there. And that's actually the biggest victory that a US president has ever had. So they've never had a victory like that before. Usually they'd obviously been much closer. Mr. Lee's put on there. So Roosevelt gets 22 million seats, Hoover gets 15 million seats. Sorry, 15 million votes, not seats. Apologise, votes.
I always think that's quite interesting. That
Actually, it's not that low, is it?
Yeah.
Even though it's by such a landslide.
because
It's first past the post.
that looks big, doesn't it? 42 out of 48 states vote for Roosevelt. So that means he gets the majority in 42 states. But Hoover still gets 15 million votes. Who's voting for Hoover? The rich
Yeah.
people. Yeah? Okay? It's easier for them to vote. It's more difficult for your homeless people, it's more difficult for those people that are employed, it's more difficult for those people living on the streets to vote. So it looks closer than when you just say 42 out of 48
Yeah.
states, but it shows America is desperate for a change. Desperate.
Moving on.
Yeah, everyone okay with that? Everyone okay with everything so far? I know we're going quick, but if there's anything, do just ask. I'll go down here.
You know what you didn't have that quite a lot, really. The board needs to be high, doesn't it?
Really, yes. It's okay.
Right, so we're going to have a look at then what Roosevelt does in order to deal with the Depression. So, as we said before, at first, when he's on his election campaign trail, he doesn't really say what he's going to do. Other than that, he's going to try and make a change. He's going to try and improve things. One of the first things that he does then is these fireside chats. What is a fireside chat? What is a fireside chat? Yes, so he goes on the radio, and what does he do when he's on the radio? Does he sing? Be nice, wouldn't it, if he sang? What does he do then?
What would you say?
gives hope. Excellent. Yeah. He might sing the national. He might sing the national anthem.
Sorry. Izzy, what did you say you would sing? What did you say you would sing? God save the Queen. Well, maybe not.
So he gives people hope, doesn't he? So he goes on and he talks about what he's going to do. That's what he does. And how does he? What language does he use as well, which is quite important. Yeah, common language, good. Language that everyone is going to be able to understand, because often sometimes politicians would speak in ways that people didn't really understand what they were saying, sort of went a little bit over their heads. Remember, as Mr. Lee was saying before, people in the 1930s aren't necessarily all that educated. Some people don't stay at school for very long, they might not be able to read and write. So he speaks in a way that everyone can access the information. So he's giving people hope and he's telling people what he's going to do, which is really, really nice. So people feel more included, more involved. When we're scared about something, what are we usually scared about?
Change.
Yeah, change, the unknown. That's what you're scared about. So think when you were little, you were scared of the dark because you can't see things, and sometimes your dressing gown looks like a person. So you've never done that? Why they've woken up and their dressing gown looks like a person?
What type of dressing gown have you got? Have you got one of them hoods with like?
Of course I've got a hood. I've got 2 dressing gowns as well.
Of course you have.
And no one else ever had that where they woke up and thought their dressing gown's a person.
Oh well, Helen Elliott has.
Yeah.
So you've got one
Good.
person
Yeah.
there. You've
Thanks,
got one
Helen.
person.
So it's the idea of unknown, of things that they don't know about, and so that's why people feel much more reassured because he tells them, even though he says things aren't very good, well, but this is what I'm going to do in order to deal with it.
And he's realistic. So it's
Yeah.
not like Hoover who's saying no one is actually starving, prosperity is just around the corner. What Roosevelt is saying is, I'm going to try, but I know it's hard. You need to work with me, and you need to sort of believe in what I'm doing. So he is realistic when he does talk to people, which is really important.
Should we go to New Deal first and then do banking crisis?
You can do it in whichever order you
I
want.
will do that.
Okay.
Right, so the New Deal then, who does he work with? He doesn't just work on his own, which is maybe a little bit of a change as well. What does he do? Who does he employ? You've all got one in your head.
A brain.
A brain, yeah. So he employs some people known as the Brain Trust. Who's in the Brain Trust? What types of people do you think?
Trying to sort out
What's
the
the
economy.
yeah.
Who's going to be in the brain trust?
What type of people might you have there if you're trying to sort out the economy? Yeah, like business owners, businessmen, economists. So he realises he can't do this on his own. So he appoints people to work with him. So he's got lots of people to share ideas with. Again, which is maybe a little bit of a change, because before, what do you think Hoover did when he was doing all of his changes? Who do you think Hoover worked with? Himself, yeah, it was a little bit more on their own. So this is again a little bit of a change for that. So he employs the Brain Trust in order to help him deal with things. So he's got politicians, lawyers, economists, lots of people to help him. And they come up with 3 things. What are the 3 things that they come up with? They begin with R. Excellent. So relief, recovery, reform. They're the 3 things that they decide that they're going to do, don't they? So this is where they actually put a little bit more meat to the bones about when you see he's going to try and do. What do we mean by relief? What's he going to do first? Which is probably the most important thing for most people. Give them what? Food, shelter, those things. Those important things that you need in order to survive. So it's short-term relief. So it's about getting people back into homes, making sure that they're warm, dry, fed. What's the recovery? What they're going to do next once the people are a little bit less malnutritioned? What do they need now? Jobs. Excellent. They're going to need jobs, aren't they? So he's going to provide people with jobs, isn't he? So that people can get back on their feet. What about the reform? What they're going to do with the reform? Yeah, excellent. Provide a kind of safety net. Stop it happening again. Brilliant. So this idea of try and put some things in place so that they never have a crash in the same way, or if they do, who's going to be a little bit more protected? What types of people? Who'll be a little bit more protective if it does happen again?
More vulnerable, like the homeless.
Excellent, the more vulnerable people, so maybe the young, the old, the disabled, people like that. So that's what he wants to do. Why do you think people like that? Why do you think that would work quite well when he just comes up with those 3 R's? Why do you think that's quite good? Can you remember the three R's? Yes? No? Yeah, so therefore it's simple, it's easy to remember, you understand what he's going to be doing. It's not kind of all in sort of politicians' sort of jargon that you don't understand. He says, I'm going to give you food and supply and shelter, I'm going to give you jobs, I'm going to try and stop this happening again. So people can really easily see. So when he comes on the radio to talk about it, it makes sense. So, do you know how many different laws he introduces or different acts he introduces during this first 100 days when he's in office, or the first 3 months? And he comes in March of 1933.
7.
Give us a number. How many agencies does he pass? How many laws does he pass?
Is it 30?
It is 30.
It
Well
is.
done. And I've not done 13, but I've kind of picked out some of them,
Yeah.
some of the more important.
So he passes 13 different acts in 3 months. So that's quite a lot, isn't it? So they pass them through Congress really quite quickly. So one of the first things he does is the banking crisis. What do we know is the problem with the banks? What's the problem with the banks? I've already said this before. What are a lot of them doing? Go and bust. So he needs to sort that out straight away, doesn't he? Because the Bank of America, so you know the flagship bank, has gone bust in the 1920s. So they need to sort things out. So what does Roosevelt do? What does he do?
Has a bank holiday.
Excellent, he has a bank holiday, so that's where that comes from. So when you're off on a bank holiday, think of Mr. Roosevelt. So he closes the banks.
So say Mr. Rule.
You could think of Mr. Rule as well.
You're on a back holiday. Think of Mr. Rule.
So, yes, Erin.
Do you have another piece of paper?
Paper, yeah, of course.
Got the blue one down here. If she wants blue.
Yeah. Right, so they shut the banks for 4 days, don't they? Friday through to Monday. And then, what does he do with the banks, or what do they do during those 4 days? What do they do
Puts
during
money
those?
into them.
Pardon?
Puts money into them.
So he puts some money into them, but what does he do? Does he allow all of them to reopen? No, he only allows ones that he thinks are going to be able to actually survive, stay open. So he says to the people, the banks that are open now are safe, deposit your money into them. They also deposit a little bit of money into them, but he urges the people to do the same and says, these banks are safe, so if you put your money in these banks, they will not go bust. What do people do then after that? Do they trust him?
Some do.
Yeah, and actually quite a lot of people do put money in, and there's quite a bit of money deposited. I think I want to say, I don't know if it's $1 million or, I think it is $1 million is deposited sort of
In the
relatively
fir- yeah,
quickly in the
it's-
first 3 months or something.
Yeah.
But none of the banks that reopen do then go bankrupt and go bust. So it works. So it restores people's confidence because he's done something and it's worked really well.
I mean, just to give you an idea of the scale, in New York City, when you talk about banks that go bust, you know, the Bank of America in New York City went bust, arguably one of the biggest banks. So that's the scale he's trying to tackle here. So this is very difficult. And if people are seeing the banks going bust, if they're losing their life savings, you know, you're going to be very, very, very wary of using a bank again. So for the president to officially back 5,000 banks, say your money's going to be all right, restore confidence is very difficult, but he does do it to an extent. He does. I wouldn't put a figure on it, but I imagine about 60% of people probably get back involved.
Right, let's go through the first New Deal then. So the first New Deal is from 1932 to 1936, isn't it? So let's see if we can fill in some of these words, because these are some of the alphabet ends. Not all of them, but some of them. Can anyone do the first one? Farah, excellent. What is that? Briefly, we're going to sum it up just in a sentence. What is it? Mr. Lee's already writing it.
Come on, people.
Anyone know what Farah is?
Federal. You're right. Yeah.
Well,
Federal Emergency Relief Act.
yeah, agency.
Agency, whatever you want.
So this is actually money that Roosevelt is using to help the poor. So before we said the soup kitchens was run by Al, by the Salvation Army, things like that, whereas this is the actual government doing something. Right, the next one, there is space C and another space. What could that be?
CC.
Excellent. CCC. What was the CCC? Who was that aimed at?
Workers.
Workers. Yeah, what type of workers?
Men over
Men.
25.
What type of men? It's not everyone, it's a bit more of a niche group. Excellent, under 25, so 18 to 25-year-olds, and it's about them getting some experience. So they often go away to work somewhere, they get very little pay, something like $1 a day, which they might send home, but they get food and shelter to sort of give them some skills and some experiences and boost people's morale up. You've got to think at that time, people are feeling very low, they might not have worked for very long, particularly for men. At that time, what is a man's role in the 1930s? Not trying to be really stereotypical, but what is a man's role in the 1930s? To provide, yeah. So people might be feeling very kind of demasculated because of this. Right, what about this one with the P? Excellent, the PWA. That's a little bit different. What does that one do? Who does that aim things at? What type of people? Not young men, but what type of people maybe? Because it is job still. Skilled people, excellent, about more skilled workers. You will have labour as well, but it's about skilled workers as well. So, and they're building things of lasting value, aren't they? So they're building roads, they're building hospitals, they're building schools. What about this one? The AAA, so something to support who? What type of people? The farmers. That's what you said before, Chloe. What did the AAA do? Or what did the government do? They killed the piglets, which caused a little bit of uproar. So again, they were buying excess food. What about this one? The NRA, yeah. NRA is a little different to the ones. What are the NRA doing? What the NRA doing is a little bit different to the ones we've seen before. It's a bit of a different arc. What do the NRA do? Any ideas?
Is that the one with the blue?
With the Blue Eagle, yeah. So it's about kind of helping people when it comes to their working hours, their working conditions. And if you're part of the NRA, you could put the Blue Eagle in your shop window, in your business, and people would know that you were part of the NRA, so people were more likely to shop with you. Brilliant. What about this one with the V in the middle? TVA. TVA, excellent. What does the TVA do? A little bit like the Hoover Dam. Yeah, it starts, it's in Tennessee. What are they building there? Yeah, so well, they're building dams that to provide electricity, to also decrease the risk of flooding in those areas. So it's like works projects that is going to improve both the soil, but also provide cheap electricity. And also while they're building it, provides jobs. The last one then, which begins with an H.
HLC.
Yeah, the HLC, who's that going to help? Is that going to stop people from losing their homes? Excellent. So again, it's a way of stopping more people losing their homes. On that note, Mr. Lee, I need to go because I need to go briefing.
That's fine. I was just going to very quickly whiz through the rest because I'm conscious of time.
Well done, people. I need to go. Save your brioche. There's some over there, sir.
Everyone okay with the first two? They're kind of the main ones. Alright? They're the main ones. So you've got loans to help secure low mortgages. TBA, that's public work projects in specific states. Okay? Then they're all kind of relief based and some recovery. So a lot of people criticise the first New Deal because it's not looking at longer term things, it's more shorter term. So then 1935 comes along and Roosevelt unleashes the second New Deal. Okay? And the second New Deal is more longer term recovery and reform related agencies. The two most important ones, the Social Security Act and the Wagner Act. What's the Social Security Act? Anyone know?
So anyone wants.
What's the Social Security Act? Who does that help? What does that offer?
Oh, isn't that benefit?
Yeah, that is essentially the beginning of the benefit system within America, offering pensions and offering an allowance to those who are unable to work. The Wagner Act, what's that to do with? Does anyone know? It kind of takes on this one. Takes on the NRA's responsibility. What's the NRA doing? Working conditions, so what do you think the Wagner Act does? Right, so it's all to do with working conditions and also things like a minimum wage, okay, sets up minimum wages, it sets up agreed working standards, sets up all these things to ensure the workers are managed appropriately by the business leaders. Opposition and criticism, I think you'll know the groups, okay, that oppose him. There's individuals and then there's groups, so things like the Supreme Court, the rich, business leaders, Republicans, individual states are your groups. The three individuals are Huey Long, Father Coughlin and Francis Townsend. Just be aware of why they oppose them. They essentially say he's not doing enough. Why do they say he's not doing enough? Because America falls into a second depression in 1937 because Roosevelt won the 1936 election. What does he start doing with the money that's being put into the agencies? Takes it out. So that means the agencies become slightly more fragile and are supposed to be supported by the states, but the states don't have enough money to fund these big projects. The last thing you talk about in this topic is World War II. Okay, the two programs, one is called Lend-Lease. Okay. Alright, the other is the cash and carry. If you get a 12-mark question that asks you about the depressed New Deal, it may ask you, the New Deal was responsible for the economic recovery. How far do you agree? If it's a 12-mark question, your 3 paragraphs would simply be, New Deal did really well, New Deal didn't do very well, and then the impact of World War II. Okay? And my argument would always be, the New Deal starts the recovery, but World War II finishes the job. Everybody happy? Sorry I had to always do that. If you've got any questions, just ask your teacher about it or see me as well. Fantastic! Another 45 minutes of fun, brioche, slightly funny tasting coffee. We'll see you next week for the final session for the Vietnam War and a little bit of question practice for the 8 and the 12. If you can put Miss Wells's room back together, Missy's already. Thanks very much, you were fantastic. See you there.